I think I'm just trying to make sure everybody gets in before we get started. All right. Okay. Well, I am going to be recording the meeting. I am also going to ask that, we wait and to ask any questions or comments until the very end of the meeting. If you want to put them in the chat, that's fine, but I'm going to be screen sharing, so I might not be able to answer until the end. But we do have time set aside for questions. I am going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay. And then can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh,
Yes.
good. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, so my name is Rakel Sanchez, and I am the District Operations Manager for the Colorado State Conservation Board. And again, thank you guys for joining us today. We are going over the updated matching grant application process. And so, a little bit of background and history about the matching grant program. It is competitive, it's open to all conservation districts in good standing. It is to help districts implement private lands on the ground conservation projects and educational conservation activities, provides matching state funds towards the cost of such projects and activities, and leverages dollars as the districts and their partners provide the other half of the funding. So, the purpose and the background of the matching grant program all stay the same. And so, why change? Well, we needed to make our documents all accessible, which you guys are all well aware of the accessibility changes. And so, we were already going to be in there making the documents accessible, and we knew that we needed to update them. So, we thought this would be a perfect time to tackle everything at once. So, we also wanted to create clearer scoring criteria, easier readability, and just allow the applicant freely to describe their project without any kind of prompts. And so, what exactly changed is we have step by step instructions, we've separated the exhibits, we have separate budget instructions, and then the scoring criteria. And so, first things first is the matching grant application guidelines and checklist. And so, this document is really the instructions that you're going to need to fill out your application. And so, the very first page has the CSCB mission, the program background with a link to the scoring criteria, the deadline, the requirements, the funding source and distribution. So it's good to understand where the money is coming from for these projects. Operational requirements to consider. This is important to make sure that you have the bandwidth in order to manage the grant, which is just, the same as before, the quarterly reports, the final report, publicity efforts, etc. Who to contact at CSCB, how to download the application and the instructions, and then it breaks down each exhibit. So, as I show you the exhibits as we go farther, this will all make a lot more sense. But, the exhibit A, did I answer the questions thoroughly? Exhibit B, the narrative, really, it provides, examples of what you need to include in your narrative, listing your partnerships, listing your what, when, how, why, all of that. And then Exhibit C for the deliverables, and Exhibit D, the budget. And so really this is like your step-by-step instructions, and probably my favorite part of this document is a checklist that we provided. And so kind of what we envisioned when we were creating these documents was you would have, you'd be working on your application on in one hand, and then you would have this printed out next to you or on the screen next to you, and you could go off and check things as you were done, right? So I answered all the questions thoroughly. I explain the project's goals. The deliverables are mentioned in the narrative, but also the exhibits. Just really trying to help make sure that you guys have all of your T's crossed and your I's dotted. There is the optional exhibit E, which is the quality pictures, 3 max individually labeled, but just a checklist to help the process. And so moving on, um, we will look at Exhibit A, which is the general information. And so this is going to look totally familiar, right? This was the first page of the application before. Pretty much all of the questions are the same. There's one new question in here where it talks about has your district participated in the matching grant program before? Yes. Yes, but at least 5 or more years ago, or our district has never participated in the matching grant program. And then the rest is just very familiar, listing any acronyms, the project summary, the project overview checklist, etc. And so, one thing that changed is this used to be part of the narrative, right? Well, now this is a separate exhibit that CSCB staff will review, and it doesn't necessarily get scored. It's just a pass or fail. But what does a fail mean? It just means that we're going to come back to you and say, hey, your SAM.gov ID is expired. We need to work on getting it updated so we can move forward. Nothing really means fail. It just means we're going to fix it so we can move to the next part, right? And so next we're going to look at Exhibit B, which is your actual narrative. And so this is it, guys. This is completely different. And so all you're going to do is type your district name and then your project proposal here. So again, that's why those guidelines and instructions are going to come in really handy if you don't have a lot of experience with narrative writing or grant application writing. Those instructions will really help guide you paint that picture to tell us what your project is. Okay, and then Exhibit C, the measurable deliverables. So, technical, these are going to look familiar too, right? So, the measurable deliverables for technical projects, we have shortened the list. We tried to take out what we didn't think was really necessary anymore. And again, on those application guidelines and instructions, we have examples of measurable deliverables you can include in your narrative, but also help filling this information out. And educational is the same. We've shortened it quite a bit. If your project encompasses both educational and technical, then we ask you to fill out both, which hopefully won't be too much of a problem. And then Exhibit D is the budget. And so again, we have our budget guidelines. And so this is probably where you see like the biggest change in accessibility. So with our spreadsheets before, you couldn't have merged cells. That was inaccessible, right? So the instructions used to just be in the cells on the spreadsheet. So now they're on a separate page. It has the budget application guidelines, the instructions of how to fill out the budget, and then just all of the definitions listed for the commonly used terms that you will see throughout the budget. And then here's the actual budget spreadsheet, which that should look very familiar to you as well. It is the same, just missing a lot of that verbiage. No merge cells, and you're just going to fill in the information just like you would before. If you're new to this, it calculates whether you've got your 50% cash match and your total match. And then it has the tabs for the budget questions that you will need to answer as well. And then if you have any more information you want to provide, you can use it on the budget notes. And then, so Exhibit E, that is the optional photographs. And so we are asking for, and this is nothing new also, but quality pictures, 3 maximum, individually labeled, and we are asking that they be high resolution. And so we do have an example here. I just found a picture of a windbreak, and I put pictured windbreak done with our matching grant funds at insert name here and the date. And it's just really important to make sure that you are providing those quality pictures because we like to see the progress, right? So, the befores and the afters. And a lot of the times we take these pictures and we put them in the annual report to showcase the work that the conservation districts do. We put them on fact sheets that we then give to CACD, who take them to lobby to try to secure more funding for the program. So those pictures and the stories that you guys tell, it's extremely important. Last year, we made a fact sheet that was looking at matching grants for the past 5 years with pictures and stories that you guys have provided. And we brought it to the CACD annual meeting where we went and handed it out to, well, they handed it out to legislators. And I mean, they loved it. And so I just cannot stress enough how important it is to provide good, high quality pictures. And then scoring criteria. So it is still scored by a committee of experts. So those of you who have participated before in the past, that is the same. And for those who don't know, it usually consists of members from the Colorado State Conservation Board, board members from CACD's board. We usually have somebody from NRCS, and then we have other conservation experts. We've had people from DNR. We just like to have like a well-rounded group of experts to score. And then the scoring criteria is what we've changed. So let's take a look. So, as I kind of mentioned before, what will be reviewed by the CSCB staff, which is the grant administrator, is the general information sheet and the budget. That's like a pass fail. So, pass, you met the minimum requirements. Budget, you met the minimum match needed, right? Fail, if you're missing questions or you're missing match. And like I said before, it doesn't really mean that you fail. It just means that we're going to come back and say, hey, we're looking at the budget and you don't have enough match here. You need to fix this, right? So that is new. And then this link to the score sheet, that's for the actual scoring committee when they're looking at it. But the things that you will be scored on, let's go. Everything will be scored between 1 and 9, no half points, no in between numbers. We're really trying to create a like separation between projects, between scores. That was probably one of the biggest reasons why this committee formed. Was being on the scoring committee is one of the hardest things you will ever do because every project is worthy to be funded. Every project is great, right? And for the longest time, the highest scoring project there may only be like a 12-point spread between the highest scoring project and the lowest scoring project. And it didn't feel good when you had a half a point off of somebody's project not getting funded. And so we really wanted to try to find a way where we could create some separation in the scores, right? So everything is like I said, a 1 to 9, where it's being scored on the goals, the context, So the why, the statement of need, background research, and conservation issues being addressed. The scope, so how, the project outline, potential impacts, the timeline. Methodology, so the what, the tactics, the specific project details, the partners and organizational capacities, so the who, partners, collaborators and staff, management responsibilities, status of commitments. And so I really want to stress here to really make sure you're listing everybody is involved, because there have been times in the past where we're reading these applications and we know that the district is working with NRCS, but they didn't put them there, because I don't know if they just assume that we know, but I wouldn't, but don't do that. Don't just assume that we know, like list everything in detail. Don't leave any room for question, because we need to know everything. And I'm not part of the review committee, but I'm speaking on behalf after participating with them several times or being with them. And so then the finance and the budget, which is the money, so the cost, the recipients, spending parameters, vendors, tracking, stewardship, and reporting, and then the outcomes. So the determining success, measuring, monitoring, project review. How are you guys monitoring the project? How are you going to know that it was a success, right? Um, and then also bonus points. So this also was intended to really help create more of a difference in the score. So every member on the scoring committee is going to be given 30 bonus points. And then they can give up to 5 points for win any one application. So this is where they're going to be able to really pick their favorite projects. And this kind of replaces, I don't know if you guys remember on the old scoring criteria, we had one that was a funding preference where we always said, if this was your checkbook, what would you want to fund this? What or in what order would you want to write these checks, right? And so this is really the same thing of helping just really set different projects apart from the rest. And then last but not least is the submission. So you're still going to submit it as a PDF to the CSCB grants email. And then as a confirmation of your submission, the grants administrator is going to send a short Google survey asking for feedback regarding the new process. And then I just have to say, your input on that survey is invaluable. We worked together for over a year trying to develop this. And so we want to know what you guys think. If and what we can change or what you like better. That's really important. Um, and so thank you. And I am ready if you guys have any questions or comments. I'll stop sharing.
There's a couple of comments in the chat. We have Katie Bell. She asked, are matching grant funds state or federal? If state funded, why sam.gov, not federal funds?
So they are state funded, but we ask that, I mean, we want all of the conservation districts to be registered with sam.gov. That's always been the requirement. But they are state funds.
Okay, and then we have another question that says decent pictures are, oh, it's not a question. Just decent pictures are my reporting downfall. Usually a bunch of back of heads looking at whatever our awesome speakers are demonstrating. So true. I
Oh my
totally
gosh, I
understand
am the
that.
same. I am the worst at taking pictures, so I totally understand. And we have to do the same thing for our board. So we usually like designate somebody, like Garth is who we usually designate to take all the pictures because he seems to do the best at it. So I totally get it.
And then Holly said, when will these new forms be available on the website? If we had not had a matching grant before, do you just want a before picture of the project as we would not have after pictures?
So, the forms are going to be up on the website probably as soon as I process this recording and get it on the website. I just wanted to make sure that I presented them to you guys first, answered any questions that anybody might have before I put them on the website, and it wasn't just like surprise. So I would say at the very latest, they'll be on the website tomorrow, but I will send an email out to everybody that, here's the recording of the coffee hour, and here's the link to the matching grant page with all the new documents. So you will know. So if you've never had a matching grant before, maybe I kind of misspoke. This is more just like, let's say you're doing a weed project, right? Like if you would decide to include pictures with your application, like having a picture of the land before your project started, right? So like these are the weeds this is the area that we're targeting, right? So that way at the end, when you send us your final report, and we can see the land after. That's what I meant by before. Um, does that answer that question?
Think so. It looks like yeah, Holly thumbs up on there. And then we just got a question from Penny asking what is the total amount to apply for this year of funding?
It'll be 25,000 again. Anybody else? Any other questions or comments on
All right, we got some other questions coming in. Jacob Gilbert with examples you just gave using weed photos, do you mean include a before plus after photo from a previous year or just before photos for this year? I'm thinking she meant before photos if it's like a brand new project, just the before of like what it looks like before you started the project so that we have a baseline at the end when you submit the after projects for the completed of like remediation or whatever you're doing over there.
Yep, and I would say if this is like a continuation, like every year you guys are doing this like similar project, we really want to know, what has worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past, what have you learned? What is successful in it? Like really in that narrative is where we really want you to talk about, like, cuz a lot of the times we're like, man, we know they tried this before, and we'll go back and pull, the final reports and stuff, but in your words is helpful too. And then Kelly, I do see Holly's question about so the total is 50-50 match of 50,000. Well, so you mean like a total. So if it's 25,000 you're applying for, then yes, you have to match 25,000 too. And so it'd be a total of 50,000. Half of that $25,000 match is cash, hard cash. The other half can be in kind.
Are you seeing the other questions in
Yeah.
there? Do you want me to? Okay,
Doesn't
okay.
the matching grants come from severance taxes? How will all the federal cuts affect severance taxes? So you are right that the matching grants come from the severance taxes. So this money has already been allocated in our budget. If things, in the future are impacted differently, then we will address it when that happens in the future, right? Because I think you've been with the districts for a while, Nancy, and you might have seen in the past where they weren't able to do matching grant programs or they were only able to do lower amounts. And so, the impact might change in the future, and we'll have to address that when that happens. And then Holly said, are there any restrictions to who your partner can be? Nope. There are no restrictions. We love to see the partnerships and the collaborations. We think that's extremely important.
Hey, you can't use federal match though, right?
You can't use state match to match the
Oh,
matching
okay,
grant
okay,
program.
okay. But you can leverage this against federal,
Right. Yes.
if anyone ever had any federal money again.
Yes. Correct.
Gotcha.
Anybody else? So the applications are going to be due on July 11th. I heard talk of the matching grant being distributed more equally across the state, giving more smaller districts more of a chance. Is that part of the scoring? So one of the questions that we saw in the general information is, have you participated in the last 5 years? Has our district has never participated, or our district participates? And I don't necessarily know like if that's going to be part of the scoring criteria, but it might be a factor that does come into play, right? And ultimately, it's up to the scoring committee where the funds or how the funds are distributed. We usually go over a lot of different scenarios. We go over, here it is going from top to bottom, and here's the distribution of what that looks like. And then, I think there have been years in the past where the drought was really focused on. So we might look at water projects, or, it just really depends how the review committee comes down to it. But those are things that we want to take into consideration. Does the grant need to be for a specific project? Or if the district wanted to purchase a no-till drill to rent out a small acreage owner for reseeding a pasture? So normally it's for a project, and not necessarily to purchase like equipment. Mom's phone. I love that. I said, is that my mom? Anybody else? I know change is always hard, but I think that it's going to make it maybe a lot clearer for everybody. All right. Well, if nobody has any more questions, I'm going to stop recording.